Hey, it's the software engineering student here, and today we're going to be talking about classes and objects. So previously, we've only been working inside our main class with our public static void main method. But now we're going to work in another class, which means we're going to first look over here. We have like this project structure, and we would go to our first package. So we got like a source folder, some packages, which is kind of like a file folder, just a normal folder, and we got a job, a main class. So click on the com.company, which if you just created the basic template, you have a com.company package. Go to File, New, Java class. And let's create a student, because that's often the case. So now we have a class. It's a separate class. And a class have three different sections. So let's first create these sections and explain. So I'll just do some comments to give a better understanding where each section is. So first of all, we have the attributes, which is kind of like a variables, a class variables. Then we have a constructor, which is kind of like the recipe for building our object later. So we have our class, which is a blueprint for our specific object we're going to create. It might seem a bit confusing at first, but you'd get a hang of it pretty fast when you start like coding and creating some objects and classes yourself. So, and we also have some methods. So first of all, let's create some attributes. So attributes are just like the variables we've been creating previously. So first of all, we would create, for example, we could create a string type name. So the type of the variable is string, and the name of the variable is name, and we would do nothing. We just create it. And we could create an int age variable. And then when you go in the constructor, would go when we create an object based on this class, we would need to do public. And then we create a constructor is kind of like a method, but it always uses the exact same name as the class. We go public student. And then we would create some parameters, the inputs of the variable. We would normally just do the same as the attributes. So we could do string name and int age. But now, if we want to access the attributes, because we also named the parameters the exact same, so if we just did name, Java would think we're talking about this one. But we actually want to use the variable, have the variable contain the input of the name. So we would do something called this dot keyword, which means when we go this dot, we skip out of our constructor and access our attributes. This dot name would equal name. So we're gonna put this name inside this variable. We would do the same with our age, with this dot age equal age. So let's just do a simple method that prints some information about a student. So if we create a method like before, we do public void. So now we don't need a static modifier, because a static modifier is used when you don't really have a class. We'll probably have a video about some static methods and classes later, but for now, just do public void if you want to return void. You could do public string if you want to return a string, but I will just do public void. I'll do get info. I wouldn't have any parameters, and I would just print the name plus the age. So now, when we go back to our main class, I can create an object. So an object is that object. It's kind of confusing, but it's like where you can see the class as a recipe for the object. The object is the object itself. You get it along the line. Admit it's definitely a bit confusing, but we would do student. So this is the type. So like if we created a variable, we would do int age equals 3. So we could go type, variable name, and what the variable it contains. So we go student, because it's type student, the name student, and this is a new student. We always use the new keyword when creating new objects. And you can see it's giving us error because it says, you need to put in some data, you need to put in a string, and you need to put in an age. Yeah, a name and an age. So I would do Daniel, which is my name, and I would do 20, for example. So now we have an object. So this object can be used through our methods. So we would be able to do student, because we now, oops, that's caps lock, student, which is this specific object, and we could do student.getInfo. And now when we run our main method, run a program, it would get Daniel 20. Because when we do student.getInfo, it would access the student object, which is based on this recipe, and it would call the getInfo method, which prints to the console the name and the age, and the name of the age is inside these variables, name and age, and we have given these some kind of some values based on our constructor, which took a name and an age of type string and int as inputs, and gave our attributes those separate values. So this is like the basics of a method. And of course you can see it can get a bit complicated down the line, having a lot of different attributes. And then the next thing, if you have another class where student is a attribute. So for example, the most like basic system of classes when you start learning is talking about, for example, a student and then some kind of like school system, where the school system contains the students in some lists, and maybe the school system is contained in some city areas, for example, which another class, and so on. So it's like objects inside objects inside objects. But for now, we'll just do some simple objects, and we can call some methods on them. So let's create another one. Student, we'd call this student1, and we would go new student, and we would do Adam, we would do age 21. And we could as well, instead of just calling getInfo on student, we could call info on getInfo on student1. And now when we run a program, we would get information from Adam. So this is the basics of objects and methods. This is like the basics of OOP, object-oriented programming. So in the next few videos, we'll be talking more about like how to actually do this correctly, and how's like the proper way of setting up these classes and creating these objects. But for now, thank you very much for listening, and I hope I'll see you soon.